Well, there's no question that this is a terrible war. I mean, like all wars, this is brutal, this is nasty, and so on. But let's take an example. There was an appalling bombing of the maternity hospital in Mariupol. Immediately thereafter, the US government talked about war crimes. The International Criminal Court was suborned to say that this is going to have a file open, for war crimes personally against Mr. Putin and so on. But have we forgotten the Amaria shelter, 1,500 civilians killed in 1991 when the United States bombed a shelter, knowing full well there were civilians there. No question of any interrogation of war crimes. The language of war crimes was not used. In Libya, after NATO quite ruthlessly bombed that country, Peter Olson of NATO, the lead attorney, said openly, look, NATO can't commit war crimes. War crimes are committed by other people, not by NATO. I mean, just this recent month, there were Israeli airstrikes which struck the Rimal Medical Center. 2 doctors killed. Do we know their names? Ayman Abu Al-Auf and Moen Alolu. I mean, they were killed in the middle of all this, but there was no question of calling the Israeli strikes war crimes. So this kind of open rank hypocrisy, I think, is what is striking lots of people around the world. I have to say, Juan, that, I made a speech in Glasgow where I questioned the colonial mentality of the West regarding climate policy. That speech has been viewed by hundreds of millions of people on WhatsApp groups all around the world, including by right-wing WhatsApp groups in India. People are frustrated with the kind of colonial way in which the Western powers and the Western media reports things. The very fact that you know the flag coloring of Ukraine, but have no idea what the flag of Yemen looks like, what the flag of Palestine looks like, what the flag of the Congo looks like, and needless to say, what the flag of Iraq looks like. I mean, that has frustrated a lot of people and is driving public opinion. Let's take the question of the International Criminal Court. When Special Prosecutor Fatih Bensouda opened a file to investigate war crimes in Afghanistan, and by the way, she was really clear. She said war crimes conducted by everybody, by the Taliban, by the Afghan National Army, by the United States, by other NATO countries, and so on. When she did that, the United States government threatened her, told her that neither she nor her family would ever get a visa to come to the United States and so on. The U.S. put enormous pressure on the International Criminal Court to shut down that investigation. That's incredible. This is an investigation of war crimes which are detailed in the US government's own documents, which had been released by the WikiLeaks Foundation, whose founder, Julian Assange, is sitting in Belmarsh prison, is being treated as a criminal, whereas the war criminals in Afghanistan are going free and threatening with mafia-like tactics the special prosecutor at the ICC. Meanwhile, again, in an afternoon, to quote the Indian high official, in an afternoon, the United States is able to get these bodies established by international law, which the United States is not a signatory to. The US, in an afternoon, is able to get them to open a file and start talking about war crimes. Over 1 million people killed in Iraq and no investigation of war crimes. None. Over 1 million people. 500,000 children killed in Iraq during the 1919 sanctions regime. Not even the word genocide. The West is walking all over the word genocide, is reducing the power of an important category, of an important convention, the 1951 Convention Against Genocide. This extraordinary casual and weaponization of human rights and the word genocide by the West is going to be something that we are going to face in the times ahead, when other countries are going to say, well, we can do anything if we are backed by Washington, D.C. This is extraordinarily perilous, and I hope people open their eyes to the very cynical way in which Washington, D.C. is approaching this terrible war, taking place in Ukraine, a war that has to end with a ceasefire and negotiations. And you're not going to easily get a ceasefire and negotiations if you're going to loosely, as Mr. Biden did in Poland at Warsaw Castle, loosely call for regime change in Russia. That is not going to help you bring people to the table, whether it's in Belarus or it's in Antalya, Turkey. It's not going to bring Ukraine and Russia to the table. It's not going to stop Russia's war. If the Russians think that the United States has a total agenda to annihilate the Russian government, I'm afraid then you're not going to get a ceasefire. You're going to just get more atrocities in Ukraine, and that's something that the people of the world should not stand for.